Well, thank you very much for inviting me to come again. Show off the new brood, which you will be going over. I've got lots more photographs. In fact, I think I've got more photographs of the puppies than I have of the kids. Now, tonight I thought this would... a lot of you have heard me sort of rant on and whittle on before. So I thought it may be better to try and turn it around a little bit and do what you want to do. So I'm open for suggestions from the floor. We've had 3 things that people have asked me to mention and talk about. Things called nutraceuticals, ankylosing spondylitis and fibromyalgia, but I'm open to the floor things that want to be discussed. This is interactive. Anybody falling asleep will be picked on. Probably won't hear me because you'll be asleep, but there we go. So that's one of our puppies. We had 9, we lost 1 unfortunately. We've got 8 there, 4 weeks old now, and they have taken over our downstairs. And they are very, very cute. And it's got my kids off the computer. Fantastic. Yes. So what I thought I'd start with, just to wake you all up a little bit, you've just had lunch, dinner and all of it postprandial. After you have eat, your sugar levels go up, and then you produce insulin and the sugar levels drop, and they go below normal. And then you want to fall asleep. So actually, if anything you fall asleep, I do understand, because I'm vegetable, the sun is absolutely to die for. So what I'm going to do is a quiz, first of all, and this is just to sort of get you on your toes. What I want you to know is celebrities with conditions. First of all, I don't know half these celebrities are, but I'm sure you do. So, do you know who they are? Sorry? Yeah? What do they have in common? What condition do they have? Point for the fibromyalgia. This is just to try and sort of have a bit of interaction. Who's that? Newsreader. Sorry? A newsreader. Yeah, I hadn't a clue who he was either, but he's apparently one of these 24-hour newsreaders that tell you the same thing every 5 minutes all day. Julian Warren, and he has something called psoriatic arthritis. If you didn't know who he was, you wouldn't know what he had. These people, what do they all have in common? Go on, shout out. I used to be in love with her, she's quite interesting. Do you know who they are? Huh? Kathleen Turner? Evanson Stone? Who's that? Yeah, very good. Who's going to do the dance? Okay. Who's that? You don't know your Magnificent Seven? Come on, all the boys need to be ashamed. James Coburn and Renoir. What do they have in common? Look at their hands. Rheumatoid arthritis. In fact, Renoir had rheumatoid arthritis. This is how he held his paintbrush. That's Impressionism. Rheumatoid arthritis caused Impressionism. That's what I say. I know the truth of that. But actually, that's how he held it. There are pictures of him doing that. Very good. Who's on the left? Henry VIII. Who's on the right? Very good. Henry VIII had gout. He got injured when he was jousting. He got a lance in his leg and couldn't walk properly. Epicurus got very fat and got gout. And Jared Leto actually put on a lot of weight for one of his roles. He's one of his method actors. And actually, I must be the only person in the world who really liked Suicide Squad, the movie. I thought it was brilliant. Absolutely loved it. But I'm a bit weird. He actually put on a lot of weight in one of his roles, and he developed gout. So he swore never to put on any weight again. So very good. Oh, very good. But you know who they are? Very good. You answer all the questions, you can't answer all.
I'm sorry.
You're really good at this. Come on, this side. This side. Who's that? Very good. Who's that? Bonus points for this. Ramesses II. I can't believe you didn't like that. Probably rolled him out for one of these celebrity television programs. So they had Max Bond. Yeah. And yeah, we all know this Ghostbuster man. They had Weber's granulomatosis. He actually died of it, and she actually probably had it because of snorting cocaine. Cocaine, now 25% of it on the streets of UK is cut with an anti-worm drug called levimazole, and it causes weird things to the immune system, and people get lots of horrible vasculitis with it. And that's probably what killed her. Very good. We've given the answer, you haven't given the working out. Come on. Very good. Who's that? Does everybody know that? Yeah. Who's that? American woman. And that? Zero. Okay? And they all have lupus. You know, Pepper said Michael Jackson, oh, weird, going in an oxygen tent, pale skin, yeah, vitiligo. Then his post-mortem, he had lupus nephritis. She had to have a kidney transplant from her family. Amos, Tony Amos, I think her name is. Bees Williams, close there. People saw the Wimbledon final last year. She was going to win. She was in the tie break, she was going to go, and suddenly she went back, hit a brick wall, and didn't win another point. Because she has Sjogren's syndrome. Primary Sjogren's syndrome. And that's actually treated. She says she's treated with some diet, so I suspect she's done other things as well. And the sister's probably got something else, because her sister has had birth clots. Yeah? Tony Braxton, antiphospholipid syndrome. Sticky blood. This is a condition which causes multiple miscarriages, blood clots, strokes, heart attacks at a young age. If you're a woman and you have antiphospholipid syndrome and you're 45, you're 40 times more likely to have a heart attack than your peers. It is worse than smoking and having diabetes. Anybody knows this person, I'll be very impressed. I have no clue. I didn't know who she was either. But, sorry? I'll take your word for that. Do you know what they got? Oh! There we go. No, Rosie Martin. Bechet syndrome. God, you're not very good at this, are you? You started well. You will shut up now, haven't you? And right in class. Apart from fact about singers. Do you know what they both have? See those hypermobility syndrome. In fact, there's pictures of mine in class on this quiz show actually, hyperextending their elbows, and they hyperextend by 45 degrees. But when I see loads of patients who think they're hypermobile. And they look, I can do that. Look, on a good day I can touch below the knees. Look. People who are really hypermobile have hypermobility problems are really bendy. I mean, you must all see these people. And when I say really bendy, they go. There's somebody in this room who's really hypermobile. Who can demonstrate hypermobile hands? Do the weird thing with fingers. There's always one person.
Not tonight.
Sorry?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. There's always somebody who can do weird stuff. Perhaps they're a bit shy. They can show you later. They've done coffee somewhere. But they have hypermobility syndrome. Actually, this whole week is just going to be the quiz, isn't it? Cherry trees. Aidan, good. Very good. Now, very good. You get the prizes. Very good. Lots of points for the fun. And what do they all have? Marfan syndrome. Rachmaninoff can do 2 octaves with one hand. I'll give you the clue there. What did they have? She was an opera singer. Did you know that? Larry, yes. He actually had an associated dermatomyositis. That's actually, he had this at the end of the diet. Oh, I've told you that one as well. Sorry, I'm doing this. She used to be gorgeous too. But Brendan's wife, Stanfield. And this one? JK. But he had osteoporosis. Now she had primary osteoporosis. He had secondary osteoporosis. He had Addison's disease, which don't use enough cortisone, and so he was one of the early guinea pigs for steroids. And he looked beautiful. He had flushed cheeks, nice flushed cheeks, looked young, steroid side effects. Actually, he had osteoporotic fractures in his back. And at the time, the people said his back pain was because he injured his back, saving somebody in the Second World War on a motor torpedo boat. Actually, it's because he actually has osteoporotic fractures. And if he hadn't been assassinated, he would be very damaged by the steroids because he was over-treated. I was told that by his physician, actually. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that, but I haven't. Random fixed photograph. Still's disease. Okay, I'll ignore that. It's what's called an autoinflammatory disease. Your body thinks it has an infection. It doesn't. It just does all the stuff as if you have an infection. So your inflammation goes up and you get organ damage and things. Particularly unpleasant.
Lyme.
Oh, they're very good up here, aren't they? They're beating you. Lyme disease. That Dawson actually had it. How many people do you see you think, oh, I think I've got Lyme disease? Yeah. And the chance of having Lyme, if people think they have Lyme disease, the more likely they are to have Lyme disease, the less likely they are to have it. It's not the people who live indoors all day and never go out at all. You think they've got Lyme disease. And actually, there's this fantasy around going around that NHS blood tests for Lyme disease. The blood tests in this country for Lyme disease are useless. And there's a German lab who says, you send us about 500 euros and we'll do your blood test for you, because we're good and everybody else is rubbish, and we'll tell you you've got this condition. And it's all the European medical agencies and the FDA in the States have basically told them they're talking rubbish. But people still do this. They'll have these blood tests come back which are completely useless. Tell them, yes, you've got Lyme disease, your local service doesn't know what it's doing. 500 euros that costs. Yeah. But these people probably have, to be honest with you, you do get it in the UK. You actually do get it in Kent. Lyme disease is a tick. Yeah, you know about Lyme disease? Mm-hmm. It's a tick bite, and the tick actually regurgitates some blood into the system, and it infects it with a bacteria called Borrelia. And not everybody gets all the classic symptoms of rash. It is not that common, but we do see it down in the Romney Marshes. We do obviously about a case every year or two. But in this country, we don't get so much of the joint problems. It's the neuropathies. And classically, it's called you get face drop. In fact, in the New Forest, 70% of people are seropositive for Lyme disease. And there's a condition called the New Forest face, where they've got a face drop. In fact, you get it both sides. So that's what we tend to get in the UK. In America, they tend to get large joint arthritis, and I've got a couple of people who are American who have relapses with this, and they've got proper Lyme. It's not that common. And there's a big industry on it. The thing is, if you've been exposed, your blood test is going to be positive. So you go along with, oh, I don't feel very well, doctor, I feel a bit achy, this is Lyme, you have the blood test and it shows you've been exposed. Then people then put 2 and 2 together and make 6. You could do the same thing with doing a chickenpox blood test, for instance. You know, chickenpox blood, because all it tells you you've been exposed at some time in the last 20 or 30 years. It doesn't tell you that's what's causing the symptoms. Best guitarist in the world. No. Who? You just need to YouTube it. Fantastic. Very fascinating process. He used to drink and smoke and take drugs, and he destroyed the bones in his hips. He had hip replacement at age 45, but he's still doing that. He's actually a lot older than that. So that's the quiz. So, I've been asked to talk about nutraceuticals. Do you know what I mean by nutraceuticals? It's a horrible Americanism, you can tell by the spelling. And basically, these are dietary supplements which are supposed to have pharmaceutical effects. This is not herbal medicine. This is not homeopathy. These are herbal medicines work for a lot of people. Don't knock it. Homeopathy If you want me to give you my views on that, I will do, but I may upset some people. Nutraceuticals are basically dietary supplements. This is a huge industry. 500 million euros a year industry. And actually, a few years ago, the EU, we decided to Brexit, I'm not quite sure. The EU decided that they would actually, they would try and legislate and make sure that the claims made by these people making these dietary supplements could be validated. And said, look, you've got to show the same level of attention to the facts and doing studies if you're going to make these claims as you would do if you produced a drug. So I produce a new drug today. I have an idea. I'm going to make a new treatment for something. To get it on the market, from conception to coming out, will cost almost $1 billion, $1,000 million to put it on the market. And only 1 in 100 will get there. And a lot fall away earlier than that, but it's a very, very expensive thing to get things on the market. And that's why when they're out there, they need to get their money back. But there's a huge industry in that, and it's hard to do the research. I run a large research unit at Maidstone, and it is hard work doing that. But the nutraceutical company said, we can't do that, you'll put us out of business. So the EU said, all right, we won't do it. So they can make any claim they want. And they just have, you get Auntie Jill up the road on the front of the packet saying, I feel better, we're taking grass clippings, and you can put it in your packet. This is how these things work. There is a large placebo effect. You'll know what I mean, you know, called a placebo effect. Don't knock the placebo effect. It's what it means that my work, I can get a lot of people better. Because in the rheumatology world trials, the placebo effect is almost 40%. Now, if you have a drug which had a 40% activity, you'd say, actually, that's quite good. And actually, you can buy a drug, well, I use the term drug loosely, on the market, in the States, called that Obical. It markets itself as the placebo. People buy it and they say it works. Mine's a weird thing. And if you feel you're doing something, we do a lot of, the mind is very, very common. A lot of what you guys do is actually putting people at ease. Don't underestimate that. You guys spend a lot more time with your patients than I do. That is time well spent. I dish what homeopaths do in regards to their water memory, but the fact that you spend an hour with somebody actually is very therapeutic. So I don't care what people do. If they want to do, they just want to see a kinesiologist, happy with that. They want to see a homeopath, happy with that. The only thing I do have a problem with is Chinese herbal medicines, because I've had patients with problems, because these things have active components which can be damaging. So the placebo is really, really important. So what are the nutraceuticals out there? What I was asked to do was mention things like chondroitin, glucosamine, and vitamin D. Now, this is a trial which I think is pivotal, and I recommend it to you. It's called the Concept Study, and it was published last year, and if you Google it, you will find it, and you can get the whole trial. This was people with osteoarthritis of the knee. This is a European study who were treated with either placebo, with celecoxib, which is a COX-2 inhibitor, an anti-inflammatory. It's the safest of the anti-inflammatories, despite what NICE say. NICE are interested in money only. And with chondroitin at high dose, 800 milligram dose. They call it pharmaceutical grade dosing. And this was pain scores, and they could see the placebos did quite well. Look at that. Pain scores come down. Why is that? Well, when people go into trials, they generally aren't doing very well. And you know the nature of these conditions, they tend to fluctuate. So what you see is actually people do bad at not doing well at the start. And actually the natural variation of the condition, they tend to improve with time. But what you can see here is a difference between these two groups. This is a pain score of the knee between a placebo. I think a placebo in trials, you don't know that it's placebo. So you try and get over this effect of there's something being done there. And you can see that the celecoxib and the chondroitin were better than the placebo. In fact, they were equivalent. And I have used this study. I wish it was out there more. I've used this to recommend chondroitin to all my patients. The only place I haven't seen it doesn't work on the back. Unfortunately, all the osteopaths here, I'm sorry, it doesn't work on the back, but it works on other joint areas for osteoarthritis. It's not a panacea of all good. It won't be people making me spring chicken again, but it is certainly helpful. And I think it should be in the armoury, and I've encouraged people to do this, to use this therapy. It is often sold with glucosamine. The glucosamine is much loved by Holland and Barrett. If it wasn't for that, it'd probably go bust. The data for glucosamine is really that it doesn't work. There's been lots of trials showing that there is a little bit of improvement. The trials that show it works are done by the people who make the stuff. The trials that show it doesn't are the big independent ones. I'll let you draw your own conclusions on that. In fact, there was a very large trial in America a few years ago looking at glucosamine for knee osteoarthritis, and they had to do something called a post hoc analysis on one subgroup to show any benefit. So basically, they were desperate to get something positive out of it. And if you do enough stats analysis on anything, you'll find something which is there. But really, it doesn't work more than placebo. Yeah?
What was the study called again?
The concept study. It was in Annals of Rheumatic Diseases, and it's open. You just Google it, and you can download the whole paper. I actually recommend patients look at this, because I recommend this to people. Now, I don't say this is a drug. I say this is not a drug. This is a dietary supplement. And I say the data's not great. Look at the data yourself. What am I doing? I'm empowering someone. Get better yourself. I'm not going to make you better. In this country, we've infantilised our population. If you go to your doctor's going to make you better. No, they're not. You're going to make yourself better. Your doctor's there to help you. Your physio's there to help you. Your osteopath's there to help you. Your dietitian's there to help you. But you do it yourself. And I have to say, I think the way we do things in this country often causes as many problems as not. Vitamin D.
Sorry.
Yes.
On the chondroitin sulfate, what sort of dosage?
800 milligrams. That was the study dose here. Some trials show using a bit more, but that's what this trial was on, and that's the dose I recommend. And you can, from Amazon Marketplace, I think you can get 750 milligram dosing capsules, which is almost there. And that's just one a day.
Doesn't it also interfere with some medication?
Chondroitin, not really, no.
Okay.
No, it's just a dietary supplement.
Yeah.
Okay. Vitamin D, the sunlight vitamin D. It's in the press every week. It's good for you. It doesn't work. It's good for you. It doesn't work. Last week it doesn't do anything for your bone strength. No, it doesn't. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. It is produced primarily when sunlight, UV light, hits your skin. And then you convert cholesterol into vitamin D. And then various other pathways that happen. And it is metabolically active. It does work on bones, but it also works on the immune system, it works on muscle strength, and it works on the vascular side as well. There are trials which show it works for osteoarthritis of the hip. And I will refer you to this one here, which shows that actually if you're vitamin D deficient, you're more likely to get osteoarthritis of the hip. With these trials, there are huge numbers of caveats. Somebody who's vitamin D deficient, they're more likely to be less active. They don't go out so much. And a lot of these trials are retrospective. And you'll see with some of the other stuff I'll show you, you've got to take some of these with a pinch of salt. There's no money in this. My vitamin D cost me £5 for a year's supply. Now, how much did I tell you? If I was producing a drug putting on the market, how much would it cost? $1 billion. Who's going to do that? Because I do that for vitamin D, and then Muggins up the road then sells his for £5 for your supply. I'll never get my money back, so nobody's going to do this. But there is some evidence that it helps, and there's a lot of ground music with it. What it doesn't do, it doesn't work for osteoporosis. If your vitamin D levels are low, your bones get thinner, and we use it to help osteoporosis treatments, but it doesn't treat osteoporosis, which is a big misnomer, but it does a lot of other things. Those of you who are physiotherapists who are dealing with old patients, they're all vitamin D deficient. They wasn't. Low vitamin D causes a proximal myopathy. A study in a French nursing home full of French little old ladies, just south of Paris, showed that if you gave vitamin D to one group and not to the other, the group you gave vitamin D to didn't fracture their hip. Didn't do anything to their bone strength, but what it did, it meant they didn't fall over, because it helped their proximal myopathy. So this is not just about bone strength. But I use it to treat immune disease, vitamin D, because I think there are a lot of things in vitamin D which are unknown, and I see people do very well in it. And do you know what? This has come from what my patients have told me. So I'm going to tell you. People take stuff to feel better. I never met, sorry.
Is that vitamin D3?
D3, yeah, D3. That's the active component. That's 20 times more active than vitamin D2.
How much do you recommend?
Well, I recommend 2,000 units a day. And you can buy that, you can go buy one vitamin D capsule, which is 2,000 units a day. And people some of the pharmacists get worried about overdosing on that. But a recent meta-analysis where they looked at all the different trials of people had, or case reports of people had overdosed, the starting level of vitamin D is 3 million units a month. You'll take a lot, it's a lot to do that.
I was actually diagnosed with it because my hair was falling out.
Yeah.
It's made it
Vitamin D is low for all of us, and it will have a negative impact on how your muscles work, your immune system works, and the heart side as well. And it just makes you feel a bit rubbish as well. It's not Lily the Pig's medicinal compound, it doesn't cure everything, but we do see it helps. And in rheumatoid disease, in actually immune disease, we're starting to see benefits with this. In a test tube it works. In rheumatoid disease, you see that the immune cells, if you look at this is a trial, it showed this line should be straight, it goes up, you get, this is basically effectively telling us that the immune cells called T cells are resistant to vitamin D, they don't work as well. And when your vitamin D levels are low, and the effective levels are low, your body tends to attack itself. If you replace that, does it make any difference? Well, there are some trials that say it does, and some trials that say it doesn't. The thing is though, if you go out in the sunshine, if you go out for an hour midday, you're going to get 10 to 20,000 units. It's very difficult to control for this. To do a big study will be very difficult, and nobody's going to spend $1 billion doing that. This is one of the, there's the front they go through. This is a trial, and this is what they say. And it goes through all these things. It says, oh, it sounds very wonderful. But when you actually dissect out what the trials are saying, it says things like, this is to evaluate the short-term efficacy of vitamin D. This is on the functional disability of rheumatoid patients. Again, it's subjective markers. Short-term, really, how helpful is that? Is that just a placebo effect? It looks at patients who were doing well but not doing badly. So actually almost in remission but not quite. So actually you're not going to get a lot of improvement with these people. And they say it doesn't make a lot of difference. They've had these patients had it for like 17, 18 years. So these are chronic patients and they're expecting something for 3 months to make a little bit of difference. And they said it didn't really work very well. Oh, but look, the inflammation markers all improved dramatically. It doesn't really work. Well, do you know what? That's a rubbish trial. If one of my MD or PhD students did that, I'd say go back and start again. This is published in one of our big journals. And actually, some of these are doyens. I'm surprised I put the names there. This was another one. They've got much bigger numbers, 730 patients. So look at this, you increase your risk of going to remission by 60%. But this was looking at dietary, essentially what have you eaten over the last 3 months? I don't know, I had for breakfast this morning. And they looked at it. And this is all very subjective. Because you're not going to admit on this thing that... Have you seen that thing on telly called Secret Eaters? Yeah? Well, I eat a lettuce leaf a day, we all have those. And there's, have a great big McDonald's or something. People don't admit what they need. There's lots and lots of problems in these trials. But there's a bit of mood music here that things that seem to be working. But you have to take it with a pinch of salt. So does it work? I think it does. I think that's why our outcomes are very good. There are trials done on omega-3 which have a similar outcome. In fact, there's one trial which was from a few years ago from Adelaide, which gave people standard treatment versus standard treatment plus 4 teaspoons a day of cod liver oil. Who's had cod liver oil? 4 teaspoons a day. The people who had the 4 teaspoons a day were twice as likely to be in remission. Brilliant, wonderful, excellent. Nobody could take 4 teaspoons a day because it was horrible. So what's the dose? I don't know. This is a problem with these trials. So I would recommend vitamin D and omega-3 to a lot of my patients. And actually, a lot do surprisingly well. Some don't. I don't know if that's placebo. But if I'm empowering that patient to actually look after their own health, do you know what? That sometimes works on its own. Placebo effect. Don't knock it. There's lots of things about nutraceuticals out there. Most of them have no data behind. At all. They say it seems to work. You know, some people report some benefit. What does that mean?
How many patients overdose?
Sorry?
How many patients overdose? Or do they just...
On which one?
On, well, like glucosamine.
Glucosamine is just a food. I mean, you can overdose if the box falls in, I suppose, but effectively, no, you can't. Vitamin D has an active component in it, and potentially you could do, and actually the people who have overdosed, most of them is because their doctors give them too much, and there were 2 series which showed that one of the manufacturers put 100 times too much vitamin D in their capsules. So they were just overdosing people. Then you just stop it and they get better. When vitamin D levels go high, you get high calcium, and that can cause tummy problems, kidney problems, and various other things. You just stop it and it goes away. Your body's very good. If you lie on the beach in the south of France for an hour, at midday you'll get 20,000 units of vitamin D. That's 10 times what I'm recommending here. And that's just for 1 hour. And the body stores it stores in the liver. If you're not taking supplements out, you are now living on what you've got until next April on what you've got this year. Now, vitamin D, your immune system needs it. Some of your immune cells, things called macrophages, some of your T cells and antigen-presenting cells need vitamin D to actually function properly. When the levels are low, they don't function so well. So that is a sort of a whistle-stop about some of the nutraceutical things. Unless there's anything else? Darting? Yes?
So I heard something in the press about vitamin D helping against getting cancer. Would that be to do with the immune system? Or is it rubbish?
That's probably a Daily Mailism because it's either Daily Mail or Daily Express because they do like X causes cancer. There's a lovely website it gives you Daily Mail headlines. And it just says, 1 week it'll say it causes it, next week it says it cures it. The answer to that question is probably not. Except, of course, if you have an immune dysregulation, then you are more risk of getting things like lymphomas. You can treat that, and that may reduce. I would suggest you probably not. But so how would we know? If I go and lie on the beach, do I get more solid tumours? I probably don't. These trials are really hard. And actually you're relying on observational data. I'm talking about observational data. Yeah? So you get people just fill in forms and say, what have you had, what have you done? And you can look at hundreds of thousands of people. You've got big databases. But you're relying on other people's data, which is very, very dirty. And it's not a controlled environment. Sometimes that's the only data you're going to get. But does it cure cancer? No. Does it cure everything? Is it the panacea of all good? No. But some people do well with it. And it is very hard to overdose it. You really have to go some to do that. And so I recommend it a lot to my patients. I don't measure it in the blood. Everybody, if you're not supplement, your levels are going to be low. I don't measure it. The test is not particularly useful and it costs about 50 quid to do. And why do something which is, you know it's going to be low anyway. There's very few that I don't. Some of the people who've got end-stage renal failure, then vitamin D is not being activated by the kidney, so you have to use a slightly different agent, but they are few and far between. So most people I recommend vitamin D to. Now I'll be honest with you, not everybody will share this hypothesis. I did a talk last year somewhere in Spain, I forget where now, and I was talking about lupus actually, and I was talking about one of my treatment pathways was I give vitamin D and I give omega-3, and the Italians and the Spanish laughed at me, or heckled at least. They said it doesn't work. They don't live in the UK, you know, we don't have sunlight here. Rule of thumb, put a stick in the ground. If the shadow is longer than the stick is tall, you're not going to get vitamin D from the sun. Okay? So you ain't going to get it now till April. Unless you go skiing, of course. But what happens when the sun comes out? Oh, skin cancer! Cover ourselves in sunblock. UVA, UVB block means you don't get vitamin D from the sun. And I remember there was one study done, about 20 years ago now, which was in Hawaii. No, the land of the, just wearing not very much sunshine. 70% of people there are vitamin D deficient. What countries do you avoid the sun? So,
Right, one more. You were talking about all patients that are obviously ill when they come and see you.
Yes.
How about as a preventative measure, would you think people should go on chondroitin just as a...
That is a very, very good question. This is a non-evidence-based zone. To be honest with you, yes. Because once you've all seen osteoarthritis, yeah? Knobbly fingers, yeah? Once you've got that, it's too late. The damage is done. So, yes, if you see somebody who's got mild symptoms, and you may find all it is symptom control. Will it make any difference to the osteoarthritis journey? The answer to that is probably not. We do not have... No, there's been one drug which has shown that changes the effect of osteoarthritis, but that was withdrawn. It was an osteoporosis therapy, which actually worked for OA. But that was withdrawn due to rather spurious reasons. I think it was geopolitics as much as anything else. Was chondroitin prevent that? The answer to the question is, I don't know. Some of the trials will tell you that it prevents the damage to the cartilage. Okay, that would make sense. Would it stop OA happening? I don't know. Would I take it? I'm not, but my wife is. And it's worked. N equals 1 trial, anecdote. It's worked for her. I don't know if that's placebo or not. But she feels better on it. That cost me 10 quid for 3 months. And that saved me old... oh, my really hurts. No, take your chondroitin. Money well spent. Anything else about foods and things? Yes?
Do you take vitamin D?
Yes. And I take omega-3. At the doses I recommended.
What was the omega-3 dose?
I would take omega-3 dose at 1,000 milligrams a day, which is the cardiac dose. Every week, if something says it works for you, it doesn't, it does, it doesn't, it does, it doesn't, it does, it doesn't. It doesn't do any harm. And it may do some benefit.
Can you give the vitamin D supplements to achy, hypermobile children?
You can. You wouldn't use the doses we use here. There's a chart for children. Actually, in the supermarkets up in the north of England, they give vitamin D sweets away for free. Because we are seeing a rise now of vitamin D deficiency in children, which is rickets. And that is on the increase. And there are, should we be fortifying bread with vitamin D, fortifying food? Personally, I think we should be, but then the libertarians will say, well, people's choice and all that sort of stuff. It's not the child's choice. The thing about those vitamin D sweets, though, they're very, very sweet. There's not huge amounts of vitamin D in them either. But at least you can get them into the kids. And there's not, people say, well, why don't you get it from food? There's not very much in food. There's a little bit, but it's predominantly a sunlight thing. Last one.
I'll start with a confession. I'm actually an imposter. I'm a GP.
Fantastic.
But I do some work with sports medicine, which was my excuse. For my sins, I look after 2 or 3 care homes in Medway. The patients all turn up on statins.
Yep.
They turn up on bisphosphonates and usually Adcal D3, which they can't chew with their dentures. So we work on the basis of stopping as many tablets as possible. On the basis that the statin makes their muscles ache and more likely to fall over. The alendronic acid, after they've been on it either 3 or 5 years, makes the bones actually more brittle. But from what you're saying, it would make sense to stop all of those and give them some vitamin D3 on the basis they spend most of their time indoors and they're going to have weak muscles. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that 100%. Sorry, do you mind if we just do a bit of medicalese here? You are an imposter. You can eject him later if you wish. Doctors are very good at starting drugs. You come and see me, I write your script. I've done something, aren't I clever? You've had something from me, you think I'm clever. But after a while, when you get older, this list gets longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. And I had a patient this morning who was on 30 plus medicines a day. And that some of them were several times a day as well. Do you know what? You're going to have problems with that. Every medicine I give is a poison. Okay? And we are very good at starting, we are very bad at stopping. What you're doing is exactly, do you need to give these drugs?
There aren't clinical trials that are valid over 75 nearly at all, are there? Most of the people are withdrawn at 75 because they're too old and they've got too many other morbidities.
Yeah. If we just address statins, what is a statin for? You heard about statins. Yeah. All your patients come see you with statins and say, oh, everything hurts. Statins do work. In old people, you give them statins, they reduce their cholesterol. The body wants cholesterol. It takes it from where it get it from. It takes it from your brain. So they all get muddled. So you've got a muddled little lady, give them a statin, you make them more muddled. That's a non sequitur for me. The reason is to keep trying to prevent heart attacks and strokes. There is no data that giving statins to a woman for primary prevention works. There's very little data giving statins to a man for primary prevention works, unless you're a Glaswegian, you smoke and you drink and you eat deep fried Mars bars or something. So there's a huge industry out there about treating the entire population. And GPs get paid points. Do you still get cough points for this?
Yep.
Yep. You get paid if you poison people. So everybody gets poisoned. There we go, aren't we clever? Or no evidence base at all. Bisphosphonates, these are the osteoporosis therapies we use. Actually, they are derived from your washing powder you have in your washing machine.
Precisely.
Lovely. And they are very difficult to take. If a patient is in a nursing home, stop them, because they'll have all their tablets at the same time, first thing in the morning, and it will not work. And all you'll get is side effects. And what are you trying to prevent? If you're in a nursing home, what are you trying to prevent? And people come to harm with these drugs. Vitamin D, vitamin supplements, the Adcal. Have any of you ever tried some of these supplements that we prescribe?
No.
Try, they're horrible. Adcal is a big chalky tablet. Okay, it's a bit like one of those antacids you get, but bigger. You try the Rene tablets. Yeah. Imagine having 4 Rene tablets in your mouth at once. Okay. Now, these little old ladies are often on diuretic water tablets. They've got dry mouth. Have 4 Jacob's cream crackers and then try eating 4 Renes. They can't. They just sit there and the mouth is it's just like chalk in the mouth. It's horrible. If you're going to use vitamin D, just use vitamin D. Just use the supplements. Unfortunately, injections don't work and it's difficult to get your hands on them. But polypharmacy is a big problem. What are we trying to do? We're treating the GPs and the cough points rather than the patients. And that's where medicine has gone wrong.
Is there a company that you could send your patient to if they're like a list of drugs that they can check what's interacting with what and what they need to be on and what?
Yeah, it's called a pharmacist. That's what they're supposed to do. And they're supposed to do medicine checks. And the thing is, it's very, very difficult to stop people's medicines. Because if you do, if something goes wrong, you'll get sued.
Actually, that's exactly what we're doing. I'm sent here to get some evidence.
You're
doing a consultant and you're an expert, and then the pharmacist will agree.
Yeah.
And also, if you're giving them something, the relatives don't think you're writing them off. So as long as it's a capsule and it's green, it'll be all right.
Actually, for pain relief, the red capsules are better. Again, I want another study, white aspirin versus a white pill versus a red pill versus a green pill, and the other pills are just placebos. The red pill is good as aspirin for pain relief. So that works well as well. It doesn't give you GI problems. If somebody's a resident, you can stop things with a bit more control. But vitamin D for everybody. Stop the Chipuri study if you want to show them the data on that. That's what stops these people falling over.
Excuse me, would you recommend not taking hyaluronic acid for osteoporosis then?
It depends how weak your bones are. If you are an 80-year-old woman, you are 50% chance you're going to have osteoporosis, normal part of aging. There is actually a there's actually a website you can go to called FRAX, F-R-A-X, which you can put in all your demographics, and it'll tell you, are you going to have all your risk of fracture or not? Do you need to have an osteoporosis scan? The limit of that is 80, as your colleague was saying. Most of the trials have been done with people up to age 70 with nothing else wrong with them. And there are a few which have been done older than that, but they are few and far between. So we extrapolate. We shouldn't do that. These are different, a 60-year-old is not the same as a 95-year-old. It's like extrapolating a 60-year-old to an 8-year-old. But we don't do that, but we do it the other way. And it's led to a lot of very bad medicine, which has been encouraged by payment. And the GPs think, they've been told this is the best thing to do. Fine, I'll do it. It's actually very difficult to fight against that. If you don't hit your clock points, if you don't hit your numbers, you get into trouble. And you have to have a bloody good reason not to do that. Okay. Yeah. Spondyloarthropathy. Didn't want to pronounce this word. Someone wanted me to talk about this. You know what spondyloarthropathy is? I can't say it now. You know what spondyloarthropathies are, don't you? And you drink the water. You all have them in your clinics. It's a whole group of different conditions. Okay? The one that you all got taught at university and college and what have you is ankylosing spondylitis. There's a whole different group of conditions. In fact, I may sort of compress this a little bit because what these conditions are effectively the same condition, just doing something slightly different. So these are a whole group. If it predominantly affects your spine, we call it ankylosing spondylitis. If it affects your bowel, we call it inflammatory bowel disease. Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. If it affects your skin, we call it psoriasis. Eyes, we call it uveitis. They're effectively the same thing, and these conditions all interact. And sometimes the patients get a bit upset and say, well, you've got this and now you've got that. Actually, it's all part and parcel of the same beastie. And I think, those of you who've heard me talk before, one of my hobby horses is this thing called the microbiome. And I think these are things called mucosal-associated immune dysbiosis. Basically, part of your body's immune system, which stops the outside world getting inside you, and that includes inside your gut as well, is not functioning properly. And this is based on genetics and environmental factors and previous exposures. And I think these are the conditions, particularly where diet can be of benefit. This is, not everybody will support this, but there's a growing thought now about you all heard about the microbiome? It's just big business now. In fact, there's a friend of mine at St Thomas's who you can send poo to if you wish. I wouldn't recommend it, but he was an osteoporosis doctor and he suddenly wanted to poo because I think he knows where the moment is. And a lot of these patients actually, I just treat with trying to, can we interfere with and change this microbiome dysbiosis? When I talk about dysbiosis, it means the interaction between the immune system and the thing that's around you, the bugs and the environment around them. So what are they? HLA-B27. You all heard of HLA-B27? Yeah. What chromosome is it on? Chromosome 6. HLA-B27 is part of the human leukocyte antigens. These are the immune-presenting genes. An immune cell comes along and it pushes something to the immune system, to another cell. It says, look, I've got a glass here. and it closes it forward so something else can interact with it. So you put your hands forward for me. There we go, and you say, look, we can see that. And then that cell will communicate with this cell, knowing what they're doing is the same thing. But we also need other markers. So if you put your hand forward again, we need this one to come do a fist bump. Okay? And that will activate it. This is this whole HLA-B27 process. Why this condition causes problems. So why the hell have we got an HLA? What's HLA-B27 doing for us? It's just causing illness. Actually, there is a survival advantage to this. What you see here is a sort of an enhanced immune response, an over-exaggerated immune response. And that may be protective against some infections, particularly HIV perhaps is slightly reduced with this, maybe other viral infections are as well. Again, this is a conjecture with this, but certainly in the labs it seems to be what it does. The HIV actually, it doubles the effect. And what you see with patients who have this is they have what I call an exaggerated injury response. So if I go out running and I injure my knee, oh, it hurts. What happens to it? I twist it. What happens? Yeah, it gets painful. Then what happens? It gets red, swollen. There's inflammation there. The inflammation is painful. It stops it from taking the weight off it. Gives it a chance to heal. It heals, then the inflammation gets switched off. These patients don't have the switch off. And we see as on some slide later on, I may show that to you if we have time. They don't have the switch off mechanism, so they have this exaggerated response. And actually, the bits that we all get, if you go out, if you decide to walk up Ben Nevis, the next day, your Achilles tendon hurts a bit, doesn't it? But not for long. But these patients will get Achilles tendonitis on a regular basis. In fact, they virtually all have Achilles tendonitis. They don't even know they've got it. For them, it's normal. Doesn't it always hurt? No, shouldn't be. So these are the conditions associated with this, and there's others beside that. So I'm not going to bore you with all this stuff. You see, it runs in families. You often see the HLA-B27 gene is inherited on chromosome 6, so you often see it run down the family. And it can present in lots of different ways. Monoarthritis. Do you all know what I mean by monoarthritis? Yes. One joint. Oligoarthritis. How many? Few, yes. Less than 5, we use that as a definition. Polyarthritis. No parents. Lots. I'm giving one of my secrets here, aren't I? And patients sometimes like labels. So if you say to them you have an undifferentiated autoimmune oligoarthritis, they think wonderful. All you just describe what they've got using posh words. But they think you're fantastic, so that's what it's all about. And predominantly affects the lower limbs. Doesn't have to. Everybody can do things differently. But if you see somebody with more lower limb arthritis, sacroiliitis, don't have to have it in the spine. Enthesitis, dactylitis. Do you know what enthesitis is? Yeah? Where the tendon inserts onto the bone is the enthesis. That's the hallmark of these conditions that get inflamed. Sorry? Tennis elbow. There's lots of enthesis points, and I'll show you some of them. Dactylitis. Sausage toes and sausage fingers. This one finger has 60 enthesis points on it. Lots of ligaments attaching and tendons attaching. If they're all inflamed and swollen, what happens to my finger? The whole thing becomes inflamed and swollen. Turns into a sausage. And dactylitis is a hallmark of these conditions. Can affect the spine. Angstbond, classically here. Actually, psoriasis is a little bit higher up, often is affected. And it can affect outside the area. Look, it's the bits, the skin. Protects me from the outside world. Biggest organ in the body is the skin. That's the one for the pub quiz, by the way. The eye protects me from the outside world. Uveitis is the problem, particularly in younger children, because they don't know they've actually got a problem. If you don't treat it, they can get all sorts of visual problems and go blind. The mucosa, the mouth, around the anal region, the heart, That's a slightly different reason, but we'll ignore that for a second. The GI tract, that's where the bugs, the microbiome in your bowel is then interacting with your immune system and also in your genital tract. And any one of these areas can be the cause of the problem. But if you have an issue here with the GI tract, then there's still problems in your mouth, in your skin, in your urinary tract. So people with Crohn's disease get bowel problems, but they often get mouth ulcers and get uveitis. So these things, when somebody sees you with some of these conditions, you'll think, okay, they've got a red eye. Why is that a red eye? Got a lot of mouth ulcers. You probably won't go down to this territory. But one of the common things we see that can stop this is chlamydia. And that's increasingly common. And the food poisoning bugs, all the dysentery bugs, the Yersinia, Campylobacter, Salmonella as well. There's lots of genetics, as I've said. HLA-B27 is the strongest genetic marker, and that's what we see with ankylosing spondylitis, about 95%. But there are other genes as well. So in psoriasis is CW06. We can't test for this. We're not allowed to. And actually, it's only about 50% concordance, so it may not be that helpful on these other conditions. Normal population, about 10%. So you can have it and not have any problems. But actually, often when you see these patients, they do have a little bit of a niggle. You think, oh, is that relevant or not? Arthritis, all these reactive arthritis, you know all these conditions, all part of the same super group of things. Reactive arthritis is basically all this process being kicked off by an infection. What it is, chlamydia or bowel infection. Now this is a white Caucasian population. These conditions you don't really see in Afro-Americans. They don't have this HLA-B27 gene. It does go into, if you look at the genetics of HLA-B27, it follows the trail where Alexander the Great went. So it goes out down into Pakistan, into northwest India. And you do see this HLA-B27 there, possibly taken when Alexander the Great went there. And in fact, there's some speculation that he may have had AS. Although we have no, obviously, genetic data on that. Ramesses II, by the way, his sarcophagus is in the University of Manchester. And they did a CT scan of his spine. And he had sacroiliitis, and they had to get him his sarcophagus, they had to break his neck. Because he was like that. But he was also 88 when he died. He had 35 wives and 200 plus children. So he didn't do too bad. That's probably why we have ankylosing spondylitis now. You don't have to have the spondyloarthritis, don't have to be HLA-B27 associated. As you get older, it tends to be the young people who have the HLA-B27. The other ones with the psoriasis will have it tends to be as you get older, they tend to be more HLA-B27 negative. And this is a simple blood test that we do. We send off, it comes back after, locally it takes a couple of months to come back, it seems, but you should normally get the result back in a few days. Now, some people know, how do you diagnose inflammatory back pain? Do you all know this? I see some people really starting to fall asleep. This is what happens when you PowerPoint, you see. Everybody goes, do you know about inflammatory back pain? Do you know what I mean by inflammatory back pain?
So one of the things is pain after the sort of second half of the night?
Yeah.
After 2-3 o'clock or whatever?
Yeah. What these conditions do, they cause inflammation. Inflammation causes swelling. And so the tendons, particularly in the back, swell up. This is what you get in peripheral joints as well. And if you're immobile, you get up, you think, oh, that's a bit stiff. We've all done that. Sitting on the toilet, reading a good book, yeah? Ooh, get up, everything's a bit stiff. For a couple of seconds. These people, they got this phenomenon called gelling. They get fluid in the tendons and the joints. And it just gets in the way, and it feels stiff and it's painful. And the more you move, the better it gets. You're worse first thing in the morning. You're stiff for 2 or 3 hours, and then you're mobile. You stop, you go on a car trip for an hour and a half, you're stiff again for another hour or 2, and then you're mobile. Now how does that compare to somebody who's got a spondylolisthesis in their back? Yeah, you know what I mean, yeah? They're stiff for about half an hour.
Better exercise.
Sorry?
Better exercise.
Yeah. I'm going to start moving, and then start doing, and it starts to get worse as the day goes on. They're the opposite, it's really the other way around. It's more a degenerate thing. Inflammatory back pain wakes you up at night time. You know, why does it do that? We lie still when we sleep, don't we? No, we don't. You lie still and then you move. You turn over. So when you turn over, it pulls you out of sleep. And these people classically wake up in the second half of the night. Now, you should not have back pain whilst you're in bed. It's one of what we call red flags. Stiff for a long time in the morning. But actually, do you know what? I find that a really difficult question to ask people. How long are you stiff for in the morning? They don't know what stiffness or pain is. And you know, I have to say, I don't find that quite that useful as a discriminatory factor. Better activity and the other things which you mentioned there. Does it come on? Have you had an infection which triggered it off? Have you had a Campylobacter infection, which is a common one we see in the UK, which is the sort of chicken thing? Not going to bother with all that. And actually, if you look at the Dutch registry, GP registry, on people under the age of 45, which by and large these people are, 25% of them who see their GP have what we would call inflammatory back pain. They're not all ankylosing spondylitis, but they have what sounds like inflammatory back pain. So, how do we diagnose it? This is the ASAS criteria, which is it's an international thing, criteria that our EULAR, our European Rheumatism Group, have devised. And they say you've got to be under 45, you've got to have more than 3 months of back pain, and you've got to look at evidence of things to diagnose this. You've got to see sacral ilitis on the MRI scan. Now, the old diagnosis for this used to be an X-ray. You need to see X-ray changes. Now, X-ray changes are late. You see them after 10 years. In fact, we've just closed a trial at Maidstone, which was looking at a new treatment for ankylosing spondylitis, but their inclusion criteria was you had to have evidence of on an X-ray not been on any treatment before. We don't see that in this country. In fact, the UK didn't recruit any. They recruited a lot in Eastern Europe because they don't have ready access to MRI scans. We diagnose people earlier here, which is a good thing. But it was a pain in the ass. We put a lot of effort into the trial and we didn't recruit anybody. And we've got to look at sacral ilitis, but some other features. Inflammatory back pain, as I've described, arthritis, joint inflammation, enthesitis. Here they are specifically in the heel. You need things we talked about before: uveitis, psoriasis, Crohn's disease. And actually, anti-inflammatories work very well for these patients by and large. Is inflammation using anti-inflammatory? And they do quite well on those. This is ankylosing spondylitis. Do you see people like this anymore? No. Those of you in the room who are wiser than me and have been around longer than me and are slightly grayer than me, you remember people like this. There's people now I'm talking about. And actually, you're right there. You know what? You can't drink. I've got one chap like this. He has prisms in his glasses. Because he can't look forward. To look forward, if he doesn't wear glasses, he has to do this. That's all he can do. His spine is completely rigid. You can operate in these people, but this is major surgery. So what's come on? Basically, it's a crooked spine. We like making things sound intelligent, and we just borrow words from Greek and Latin, and makes it sound posh. And people like that sort of thing. But there's lots of different names been given in the past to the same thing. And so we'll talk about other things. It is more men than women. About just under 1% of the population will have this, but there may be a lot of people out there who have inflammatory back pain who just don't know about it. They just get on with their day-to-day life, and you know they just think, "Oh, my back's a bit stiff." That's normal for them. And you will have patients in your surgeries and clinics who you've seen like this, and you think actually when you look at them, you think actually there could be something there. This is a condition that is hallmarked by upregulation of certain immune pathways, TNF alpha, interleukin 1, and also actually more recently we've looked at different pathways with IL-17 and 23. And I'm not going to bother with the pathophysiology. Let me show you an MRI scan. This is a stir sequence. Do you know how we talk about T1 and T2, yeah?
You know that.
Do you know what T1 is? T2?
T2 fluids, T1 fats.
Yeah. T2 got 2 in it. H2O's got 2 in it. It's got water. So it looks for water. T1 looks for anatomy. Okay. T2 looks for water. The stir sequence, the fat and the water will look the same. Stir subtracts the fat from the water. What you have left is inflammation. And that's what you want. The viscosity is not quite so good in the stir sequence, but this is fluid, is water in that joint area. Do you know how an MRI scanner works?
Like the line in your molecules.
Yeah, it's quantum physics actually. If you know really how it works, you don't know how it works, because they say about quantum physics, if you understand quantum physics, you don't understand quantum physics. It's a very, very powerful magnet. And the magnets we're using at the moment, Fran, what's the MRI magnet at the Spire? How strong is it?
3 something.
Is it a 3T magnet? 3T magnet. Yeah, it's the same as we have at MTW. That's strong enough to lift up a truck. You know, you go to the old, the car pounds where they pick up a truck. And actually, earlier this year there was a fatality in America where somebody in the MRI scanner room was told to take in an oxygen cylinder. And he took it in, the thing was on, and it pulled him back and killed him, squashed him against the MRI scanner and killed him. And that's why we say to people, you can't have pacemakers, you can't have bits of method in you to have these scan stuff. And if you've got red tattoos, they can get warm. And this is the 3T magnet. I think the strongest magnets we have now are 7T magnets. T is Tesla, by the way, as in the car. And this is the amount of energy you put into it. The 7T magnets actually, it's like looking a microscope into the joint areas, into the areas. So what we do, we switch on the magnet, which is very noisy. It's like this. And then we switch it off. And when you switch the magnet on, you have a very powerful magnetic field, and all the water molecules do this, the hydrogen atoms go this. Then you switch it off. Switch it on and off. Okay, not. Oh, you're not filming this. Oh dear. Please don't share this to my kids. And when they relax, they throw off a signal. And this is where the quantum physics come in, which I cannot get my head around, but very clever people possibly can. And you can actually work out where there is water molecules, or H2O molecules. And the computers put the whole image together, and they make slices, and they create this construct of what the body looks like. Fantastic piece of science. The chap who invented it got the Nobel Prize. So what we're looking at here is a slice through the SI joints. This is the T1, which is just looking at structure. A little bit dark here. This is the stir sequence. This is water. So there is edema, fluid in this joint, and that would be a hallmark of inflammation. So this patient's got bilateral, both sides, septal uveitis. And this part of the SI, if you remember anatomy, this part of the SI joint actually is just fibrous, and this is the synovium down here. So if you inject the SI joint, you can only do this bit at the bottom. So this is effectively an enthesitis. It's that word again, isn't it? And there's the anatomy. Goes in through the entheses down here to get it over. And so when you see it on an X-ray, this has already started to, this is badly damaged and already starting to fuse. You see it in the, can you see this all right at the back? If you can't, it's your own fault for sitting miles away. This is on the back, it's a little bit more subtle. You can see here the back is very straight. When people have a back injury, often the muscles and spasms that are straight. So what you'll see here is little white, they're called Romanus lesions, these edge lesions which are white. This is all stir sequence. And this is because the ligament that goes from there to there, where it attaches, gets inflamed. The enthesis. I think these are enthesis-related conditions. And you can see the multiple sites now. What will happen in the spine, that is inflamed, that will be stiff. But after a while, the body tries to repair itself. And the problem with these patients, they have an overproduction of bone. So if you have it on your Achilles tendon, you get Achilles spur. If you have a spur here, those two bones join together. And then they get stuck. And once they're stuck, they then become unstuck. And in this cartoon, you can see this here. The bones normal inflammation, and then you get bone formation here. And this is why the treatment for ankylosing spondylitis is number 1, physiotherapy. Number 2, movement. Number 3, more movement. Number 4, even more movement. Because if you don't, the back will fuse. And after that, it comes the drugs. Drugs are not the answer. Anti-inflammatories may stop it, reduce this process. Some of the biologics potentially can actually make this worse because they reduce the inflammation and they encourage the healing. The healing is when the bones can fuse together. So these people have got to keep moving. And people with this condition will play Premiership rugby. They're in the army. And you'll never get better athletes than those people actually in the army. And they keep moving. And it's the fact that they keep moving is what keeps it at bay. People who do badly, those who say it's too painful, I'm not going to do anything, and they just stop. And they seize up. And once they've fused their spine, you cannot unfuse them. Again, showing once that this whole spine is fused together. And then, of course, the movement, if this bit up here is not fused, then the movement is all on one joint. And then that gets worn out as well. So it's all the same thing. Now, the enthesitis. The enthesitis spots. There's loads of them. I don't do all of these, but you can see the black spots here. Plantar fascia, Achilles tendon, around the knee, around the hip. Often these people will get costochondral pain. Massive investigated by cardiologists for chest pain, and CTPAs looking for pulmonary embolism. Because if you go anywhere into hospital with a bit of pain between here and here, they check you out for heart attack, PEs and everything else. You have X-rays, and they're massively investigated. And normally what happens, people give up and then they send them to me and say, could you work on what's wrong with these people? And we are often Chris, aren't we? We're people of last resort, because people say, I don't know what's wrong with this person. And if they got involved early, we could have perhaps made an early diagnosis. The ischial tuberosity is often affected. Actually, you know the ischial tuberosity? Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course you do. You guys do. And actually, the place that the trochanteric burst is affected, but also the sartorius origin is very commonly affected, as is the adductor origin. These are hallmarks of the enthesitis sites. These are the big postural muscle groups.
Is it quite common for it to be, like with rheumatoid arthritis, you often have bilateral presentations with the enthesitis?
Less likely. So did you all hear that? So the question is, why is it common to rheumatoid arthritis to be bilateral? Think about rheumatoid disease. The reason it's often bilateral is because so much is affected. So you've got 30 joints affected. And when you tick so many boxes, by definition, it's often going to be on both sides. This tends to be a little bit more asymmetric. So you often see with these psoriasis patients, they say it's always down my left side that gets affected. But if you have 30 joints affected, by definition, it's going to be on both sides because it's not going to be on one. To be honest with you, we often see the enthesis is bilateral, but you may find that it's just that one side is much worse than the other. But the textbooks say this is asymmetric, and the textbooks say that rheumatoid is symmetric. I think it's a pinch of salt with that. So these are the bits together, and we score these. We actually do an enthesitis score. And it's amazing, you just pop people and say, I've got no pain here, and you pod them. Now, to actually press the medial epicondyle is actually quite uncomfortable. But it's not painful. These people don't even volunteer it. And you do that, they go, ah! I didn't even know. So I do a lot of these spots for these patients, even if they're not volunteering.
Are they likely to have several sites?
Yeah, often, but as I said, these sites will get affected because these are tendons generally attached to something. And it is an exaggerated response to injury. So the lower limbs often get affected because, when you're running, you do both legs. But if there's an injury, you may find that there's an exaggerated response there. You tend to be 1 foot dominant.
Is it likely to be numerous sites, even if they're not symptomatic?
Not always. Not always. The more it is, the worse it is. So, we see some people who just have one joint area affected. And then you've got to look at, is this pathological, is this just they've injured their knee, or is this part of the disease process? And sometimes you have to take a leap of faith with that. The thing about looking for enthesitis is the mechanisms behind that are often not seen on those on the scanning. And if you see them, wonderful. I do ultrasound scanning. And enthesitis is notoriously difficult to see because the mechanisms there do not make you produce new blood flow, new swelling. They don't generally show that. What we're seeing on the MRI scan is what's going on inside the bone. But actually, the enthesis actually will look relatively normal under ultrasound because the process which is causing this is related to a chemical pathway called IL-27 and IL-17, which doesn't actually upregulate these things we see on an ultrasound. And even MRI scans can be remarkably normal when people are symptomatic.
But presumably, you always feel that you see people a bit too late. In an ideal world, if you'd seen them sooner.
In an ideal world, but...
So if we see people who present with something that might be incidental, non-pathological, and if there might be non-symptomatic diseases there, then if you looked for some of these sites, then perhaps if you could elicit pain there as well, even though it's not symptomatic, might that be a reason that you might consider referral much
Yeah, I mean,
in a younger patient for whom it would be...
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll do with these people is give them anti-inflammatories if they can tolerate them, if they can have them. And I think I'd be slightly careful about recommending anti-inflammatories in your clinics because they are about one of the most dangerous drugs that we have. They kill people on a regular basis. 6,000 people die in the UK every year from ibuprofen or its side effects. And you can buy that from Asda. Oh God, I've been talking too much. Sorry. Sorry. Basically, if the patient, if it's just the enthesis pain, we probably wouldn't do huge amounts because the drugs don't work very well. Unless you start to go into the drugs which cost £10,000 a year. But you're not, in the UK, you're not allowed to use it just for the enthesis pain. You can use it for the spine, the ankylosing spondylitis, Crohn's disease, psoriasis, but you can't use it for enthesis pain. Because I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to quickly do fibromyalgia, and I'll answer that question then, if you don't mind. So this is the joint, this is the enthesis. And this is the mechanism that excited me. This was 6 years ago, this was paper in Nature Medicine. And this is the microbiome, joint, the enthesis, HA-Vitalism, gut microbiome, biomechanical stress, and these are the pathways of IL-23, exaggerated injury response. This switches off the inflammation, and that's not happening here. So you get enthesis pain, and also these are things for T cells, which can be down-regulated by the use of vitamin D. And also these will be down-regulated by changing diet as well. So high-fibre diet will do that, in rats at least. Well, almost rats. And then let's talk about back, and this can affect the back and cause the spondylitis in the back. For me, this was a pivotal paper, and this changed my practice. Actually, that would be a good talk, wouldn't it? Papers that changed my practice. I remember that one.
I was just going to say, would it be possible for us to perhaps see the name of the paper?
Just for Nature Medicine 2012. I can give you the references if you wish. Do you mind if I just go away from that? Because you wanted to talk about fibromyalgia. Effectively, all these conditions, these spondyloarthropathic conditions, are a variation on the same theme. It's not working. And there's lots of horrible pictures which I'm not going to show you because you've just had your dinner. Lots and lots and lots of horrible pictures. So let's get rid of those. Fibromyalgia. Okay. You all know fibromyalgia, yeah? You see a patient with fibromyalgia and your heart sinks. And the reason for that is because these are very difficult patients who've had a very, very, very difficult life. Why is this not working? Come on. Sorry about this. Talk amongst yourselves. Does that say 5 on
Yes.
There we go. These are difficult patients, and I'll explain why in a second. There's lots of controversy about this condition. Lots of doctors think it's made up. There's no blood test for it. People think it's just patients are mad. Some are. Can't reliably diagnose it. Nothing really works. In the States, it covers a lot of hospital admissions. Do you know what I mean by fibromyalgia? Yeah? I don't need to explain what I mean by that. So these patients have widespread pain. This pain for these people is very, very real. These are the painful spots. Now that looks like that enthesis thing there we looked at. And a lot of the points are pretty much the same, where the enthesis is. These patients, you'll touch them, you put a finger on them and they pull away. They have an excessive pain response. And there's diagnostic criteria for this condition. I have to say, I'm not particularly keen on this, but there is one. The important thing with these patients is, why have you got it? It is not a disease. It's a state of being. And I disagree vehemently with the WHO on this, who say this is a physical illness. It is not a physical illness. Look at the first line on there. Over half my patients, and this is almost I very, very rarely see this in men. It's always something else. And I get diagnosed a lot, I get sent a lot of people who's supposed to have got fibromyalgia, and actually most of the time I'm saying they don't have it, they have something else. But what we do see, it is a sequelae of childhood sex abuse. And in one paper it was 70%, in another it was 50% of the people with this condition were sexually assaulted, abused, often repeatedly, often by a family member, when they were young, 10 years old, 8 years old. And if you put yourself in their shoes, you'd be exactly the same as they are. This is post-traumatic stress disorder. And you can understand why these people have a problem. They get lots of other symptoms as well. You look for they get irritable bowel syndrome, they get irritable bladder syndrome, so they go and see the urologist, they go and see the gastroenterologist. They get atypical chest pain, so they go and see the cardiologist. They go and see they get headaches, so they go and see the neurologist. And they go round and round and round, and everybody has their own name for these somatization symptoms. The bottom line of these people are ill at ease with themselves. They have a psyche which doesn't work properly. Now, some people have other conditions which may drive them towards this. So there's something called secondary fibromyalgia, when you've had, let's say, axon or rheumatoid disease for a long time, and you have secondary pain from that. It's a slightly different mechanism, but it is this, which you have to be very aware of. I mention that to GP talks because they always ask me about fibromyalgia. And at GP talk, people they say, "What about fibromyalgia?" And you can hear tittering in the background. For GPs, these patients are heart sink because they don't feel there's anything they can do. The blood tests are normal, the X-rays are normal, every investigation you have done is normal. But what these patients feel, for them, is very, very real. What you see here is the pain mechanisms, and pain control mechanisms aren't working very well. So, if I get a pen. Thank you very much. I stick this pen in your leg. What happens? You're going to get signals going up here, bouncing around the brain and saying, that man has just stuck a pen in my leg. If I don't do that, but your brain tells you I've just stuck a pen in your leg, what do you feel? You feel the same thing. And these people have widespread body pain. Now the other thing, the signals are also being misinterpreted. You know, we've all had wonderful news once. You know, there's a wonderful piece of news. Something's happened. You know, your team's won the FA Cup, or England won a football game once. You were lucky. They beat Spain the other day. Fantastic. Running around, you trod on something. You didn't feel it, and then you stop running around being so stupid. And oh my God, that hurt. Why didn't you feel it? We've all done that. It's just me. I don't know. We've all done that, and that's because your brain has a way of blocking out signals if it wants to. Now, I'm going to try a little experiment here, and then I'll answer a question. Okay? Okay. I all want of you to just concentrate now on your right foot. Think about your right foot. Think about your right foot in your shoes. Think about your right foot, if you're wearing socks, in your shoes. Just put your mind there. Just concentrate very, very hard on it. Just put your mind there. And your feet will start to buzz. Anybody buzzing? Yeah. What have I done? What have I done to you? Nothing. What I've actually done is I've opened up the signals from your nerves in your feet, and your brain's perceiving them now. Your brain should wipe all these signals out. All the time. I'm standing here, homunculus. Every single nerve is firing. If my brain takes it all in, it gets overwhelmed. So it wipes them all out. But in fibromyalgia, too many signals get through. Who's seen Back to the Future? Yeah? Brilliant movie, huh? At the start, when Michael J. Fox gets his guitar out, plugs it into the amplifier, turns it up to 11, and he does that, what happens? Gets feedback, it's blown out. That's what fibromyalgia does. He gets positive feedback loops. So pain, he gets pain. And if you do functional PET scans of the brain, you'll see the parts of the brain associated with pain are enlarged. There's more activity there than there should be. So these people are feeling real pain. They're not making it up. And the worst thing they get told is there's nothing wrong with you, you're mad. And you guys can can really, really help them. They can't move properly. Sorry.
Is there a relationship with mental illness?
Yes.
Why does it wait until they are, middle-aged? People who suffered trauma when they were young.
Very good question. Why? Because when the world's going reasonably well for you, the analogy I use here is when you're growing up. I'm going to use a cricket analogy. For those of you who hate cricket, I don't know, what was the score this evening? Sri Lanka? I don't know. Yeah? Nice. When you're young, you learn to play a good defensive stroke. Okay? And when you are in your 20s and 30s, life's busy, you're concentrating, you're physically, you're well, everything's going okay, those balls come towards you, you can leave them. But when you get to your 40s and 50s, and often this is women, not men, and I'm not being judgmental, but women often find it much harder getting older than men do. They may feel, I've lost my looks, or my husband's left me, my kids have left home. Suddenly life starts throwing balls at you. And if you know how to go play a good defensive stroke, you can play it away. But these people get hit with those balls repeatedly. I will give you an example of one lady who had fibromyalgia I saw 2 months ago. She's anonymous, so that's fine. This lady was sexually abused by her stepfather when she was 11. She thinks her sister was sexually abused as well. He now has dementia. She's having to intermittently nurse him. Do you know what? I couldn't do that. I really, really couldn't do that. And this woman was emotionally in a very bad place, and who can blame her? And her body was reacting badly to this. She was having sleep disturbance. anxiety response at night time. You wake up, your brain's trying to work out all this crap. Sorry to use medical language, you can bleep that out, can't you? That's what people with anxiety wake up in the middle of the night, because your brain's trying to resolve these issues. You don't sleep properly. Those of you, again, it's the women, unfortunately, women who've had babies. When the babies are little and they're waking up every 2 hours, how do you feel? Exhausted, crap, everything hurts. Everything's like, oh, it's like, oh. There's going to be an end to that. These people are having day in, day out, week in, week out. They can't get away from it. They have poor sleep, they don't get refreshing sleep, they're constantly waking up. They don't get into REM sleep. REM sleep is recovery sleep. They don't get into that. And they get pain, and then the more they do, the worse they get, and their life starts to get more and more limited. It is a horribly distressing condition. And I have a lot of sympathy for these people. And I think they have been maligned over the years. And I think that's because there is the blood test which shows it. And actually, also, just to go back to the previous thing about spondylotopathies, we often see these patients, all their blood tests are normal. In the psoriatic arthritis patients, 50% of them will have a normal inflammatory response. So they've been told for years there's nothing wrong with them.
How do you treat them?
Sorry?
How do you treat them?
What people fibromyalgia? The first thing I do is I try and get them to identify what the problems are. Can I just go to the last slide to answer the question? I'll talk to you whilst I'm doing this. Try and tell them that they're not mad and making it up. Because they are not mad and making it up. They are really in distress. It's getting them to understand what the processes are. I don't think I have that slide to show you. I'm very, very sorry. I'll say I'll answer your question soon. Trying to get them to sleep properly. We use tricyclic antidepressants. And if you... Yeah. Sorry, I'm not going to play around with that. I haven't got much time left. There are trials which show that if you actually use things that help put people into REM sleep, they do improve. You break the sleep pathway problems. You need to get them moving again. I often send these people to our physiotherapy colleagues for a graduated exercise regime. Do a little bit more every day. If you do too much, you're going to fall over. You're just going to keep doing a little bit more every day. But unless you deal with the psychological issues here, you're not going to get on top of it.
Do you put them into counselling?
Until very recently, I couldn't. But now we have a service which is in West Kent, which is an integrated pain pathway, which have counsellors, psychologists, and pain management. And we actually just literally in the last 2 months have had access to this. I haven't seen the outcomes from that yet. But these people often need long-term help. I do find counsellors better than CBD. CBD, you're being told what to do. Most people don't like that anymore. Counselling, you work out your own problems and you work out your own solutions. That's what people need to do. And effectively what they're doing, they're reprogramming the brain that when you get raped as an 8-year-old, you think that's your fault. If your parents get divorced when you're 8, dad walks out and never comes back again. As an 8-year-old, you blame yourself for that, but you take those emotions with you all the way through your life. And this has an impact on these people all the way through. Now, can I go to your question about the PET scan, the fibromyalgia and this? There was a study done in America, which I thought I had the paper here and I don't, I'm sorry, which looked at doing PET scans. Do you know what a PET scan is? So positron emission tomography. It's a CT scan superimposed on top of a functional scan where you put a radioactive labeled fluorine molecule on glucose from sugar, inject it into somebody, and then a proton gets thrown off and you catch it on a scintigraph. Effectively, you tell where is metabolic activity on a sort of fuzzogram, and you put it on top of a CT scan, so you get structure and you get function. And what you see in the study with people with fibromyalgia who were labelled with, who had psoriasis, these people had central enthesitis. So I think some of these patients have been mislabelled and misdiagnosed. Fibromyalgia is a diagnosis of exclusion. It's in fact, I'm not saying I'm not showing the slides. And all the textbooks say, do not go on a fishing trip, do not go to investigate these people. You have to believe again. That's complete bollocks. Because you need to work out what is wrong with them. And as I say, I spend more time telling people they don't have it than they do. Because It's very easy to say someone's got fibromyalgia, and actually it turns out that they've got ankylosing spondylitis, or they've got enthesitis, or they've got hypermobility syndrome, or they've got one of the other conditions which mask. And it's very easy to say someone's got fibromyalgia because then you don't have to think anymore. You say the man go away. It doesn't help the patient.
Why does the warmer climate make fibromyalgia worse?
Sorry?
Why does the warmer climate make fibromyalgia worse?
It doesn't for some patients. It doesn't. Some people find that is actually better for them. One of the mechanisms behind the pain is when I do that, biceps contracts, triceps relaxes. Fibromyalgia, biceps contracts, triceps doesn't relax properly. So you get a bit of sort of muscle pulling against itself. And if you do muscle biopsies, you see there's a little bit of sort of injury there. In a warmer climate, that will be helped with that. Again, this is very, very variable. In individuals, some people find warm better, some people find cold better.